Hey folks, tonight we're diving into the thrilling world of corporate finance. Imagine a company with big dreams, like a revolutionary new spork, but they need money to make it happen. Enter shares. Companies sell these little pieces of ownership to raise capital. People buy shares hoping their value will go up. Everyone wins, right? Well, not always. Sometimes people buy shares and then conveniently forget to pay for them. That's where our story begins, with a company called Gopal Jalan and Company and a landmark case that shook the world of corporate finance. This case boils down to one question. What happens when someone doesn't pay for their shares? Can the company just shrug it off? Spoiler alert, nope, they can take those shares back through a process called forfeiture. But here's where things get spicy. What happens to those forfeited shares? Can the company reissue them like brand new shares and pretend the whole not paying thing never happened? Let's find out. Buckle up because things are about to get legal-ishous. So, remember those shares that someone forgot to pay for? Yeah, those have a name, forfeited shares. Forfeiture is the company's way of saying, look, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain, so we're taking our shares back. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, Gopal Jalan and Company decided to spice things up a bit. They took back those forfeited shares, which is totally legal, but then they tried to reissue them as brand spanking new shares. The Calcutta Stock Exchange was less than thrilled about this. They cried foul, arguing that you can't just magic away the fact that those shares were already issued and then taken back. It's like trying to sell a used car as new just because you gave it a fresh coat of paint and named it caramel. This, my friends, is where the legal battle began. Now, we're getting to the heart of this legal drama. The big question the court had to grapple with was whether a company could treat forfeited shares as if they were never issued in the first place. Could Gopal Jalan and Company just pretend those shares were fresh off the press and sell them as new capital? To understand why this was such a big deal, we need to talk about the different types of share capital. First up, we have authorized share capital, which is the total amount of shares a company is allowed to issue. Then there's issued share capital, which is the number of shares actually handed out. And finally, we have paid-up capital, which is the number of shares people actually paid for. The courtroom was tense. Lawyers paced, legal documents flew, and the fate of corporate finance hung in the balance. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but this case was a big deal. And the court's decision, they sided with the Calcutta Stock Exchange. In a landmark ruling, they declared that forfeited shares could not be treated as new capital. Their reasoning was straightforward. They argued that allowing companies to reissue forfeited shares as new would be like giving them a get-out-of-jail-free card for bad debt. It would create a system where companies could essentially unissue shares whenever it suited them, which would be super unfair to investors who played by the rules. Once shares are issued, they're issued, even if they're later forfeited. So, what happened after the judges dropped the gavel on this landmark case? The business world let out a collective gasp. The Gopal Jalan and Company ruling had a lasting impact on corporate finance. On the one hand, it created a bit more paperwork for companies dealing with forfeited shares. They couldn't just slip them back into circulation as if nothing happened. But on the other hand, it helped protect investors. The ruling made it clear that companies couldn't just play fast and loose with share capital. They had to be transparent about their financial dealings and treat all shareholders fairly. This case established an important precedent, ensuring that the system wasn't rigged against the little guy. That's our show.